Okay. How many of you brushed your teeth this morning? Have you sent a text message with your phone? Have you made a phone call? If so, you probably have the manned portion of NASA to thank for that. So my thesis is that the manned portion of NASA is beneficial to both the general American public and the world population at large. So my supporting statements are that it helps with technology, helps with the education system, and it's increased general understanding of the Earth. Firstly, of course, we rely on NASA technology every day. Every year since 1973, NASA has released what they call a spin-off. The spin-off lists all of the different products that have come into the general population. Some of these examples are a cool suit, which is used to prevent burning in situations such as firefighters or even in college labs. A stress-free blowing model. This can be used to build shoes. They blow the air into the model, and then the shoes inflate, which creates stress. And then finally, stuff from the Space Shuttle program, which is the predominantly and most important part of the manned portion. So they have developed sensitive infrared cameras, which they mounted on the outside of the spacecraft to measure the heat. These are used by firefighters searching for people inside of buildings, by the Forest Service to search and detect for firefighters. They've also developed manipulative tracks for different emergency vehicles. These allow them to have different frequencies of communication, and they can talk to each other. Finally, law enforcement agencies have seen an increase in the resolution of cameras, allowing them to identify suspects. And then finally, so far as food, NASA has developed a product called freeze drying. This has allowed for all of the microwave meals and stuff that us college students rely on, including ramen. Okay, so far as the education system, according to the collegeboard.com and college.org, NASA has contributed greatly to the general undergraduate program. They contribute money to different departments that require money and allow them to do research. For example, the USCA Graduate Student Intern Program, which allows students to fly out to Cape Canaveral and do research using equipment there. NASA also provides hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships to people hoping to continue and pursue NASA. JPL, which is an unmanned portion of the project, also hosts many different schools and allows them to promote research. Even though NASA JPL is unmanned and relies heavily on robot technology, it would not be possible without the developments done by the manned portion. Finally, space exploration has increased general understanding of the Earth. Over the last 70 years, NASA has funded over 17 different projects which have allowed research into weather patterns, natural disasters, and earthquakes. Research is based predominantly on the International Space Station. On the International Space Station, there are 4 different arms sponsored by different countries. NASA sponsors 2 of these. On these different arms, they came out portions of experiments, some done by high school students. One of the main things, which is not related to weather, is the shipping tracking system, or the AHS hub. This hub has allowed the United States Marine Corps, as well as the US Coast Guard, to track ships all across the world and their movements. Based in Norway, this system has allowed for the tracking of different ships, which has increased trade time and increased time to get from point A to point B and limited congestion on the seas. Finally, there is the necessity for manned spacewalks to mount these experiments. Each of these experiments was mounted on each arm, and this would not be possible without manned exploration. For example, the European Columbus and the Japanese Kanobo segments of the modules, which were sponsored by ESA and NASA, have allowed for different portions of the experiments to be mounted on each side. A prime example is the device, an infrared camera mounted on the bottom that takes pictures of Earth every 5 seconds. Finally, a NASA crew, every time there's a spacecraft every time the shuttle would mount to the International Space Station, they would take pictures every 45 seconds of Earth. This would also allow, the crew would also look out of the windows of the space station and track time. So overall, the National Aeronautics Space Administration manned portion is beneficial to the general American public. If it was not for this, we would not be able to brush our teeth, we would not have forecasts, and we would not be able to drive from point A to point B.
Didn't feel good. Because I jumped around a lot. But I read in the audience.
Okay, you stated the proposition. The phrasing on it is a little bit odd, and definitely you run into the same issue on the secondary points. You need to work on that phrasing so they're simpler, more direct, and that it's clear what the inference is on each of those points. It sounds like informational points there. They do make claims, but they sound like they're backing into the argument rather than assertively stating the argument. So I think that that's an easy fix on an issue like this. You do want to tell us a little bit more about the controversy on this. I think that the primary argument here is that we're spending money where we have to figure out how to prioritize our money, and there's generally this argument that says that if we spent the money on unmanned space missions that we would save more money and get more outcome, so that's why we're actually having this argument. I'm not sure that anybody disputes that there have been some benefits from manned space exploration. The question is, are those benefits significant? Are they more significant, or at least as significant as the unmanned space benefits have been? And how important is manned participation in order to get the benefits even from the unmanned explorations, because you talk about a couple of things. You assert the link between JPL's effectiveness and manned exploration. You do give us an example about how we need to have manned space walks in order to be able to distribute the experiments on the International Station. Without necessarily, I mean, I didn't hear any evidence that said that we needed to do that. I'm wondering why they couldn't have planned those experiments anyway and maybe sent them up from the ground without having to go through the space station. That's not really clarified for us. The whole tracking argument, for instance, you've got this one example that you cite about the shipping tracking station that's going on there, and I'm wondering, well, how is that dramatically different from a whole bunch of unmanned GPS satellites that we have up there? Why do we need this? Why is it better in some way? I never figured out why it is, in order to brush my teeth, we had to have manned space missions. You mentioned it twice in the introduction and in the conclusion of the speech, but there was never any explanation of that. I don't know if you're talking about electric toothbrushes, if you're talking about some tooth paste that is a miracle that was acquired as a result of manned space exploration. I just don't know how you get that connection, and you used it in both the attention device and at the conclusion of the speech without explaining it. And there are a whole bunch of those kinds of things with the examples that needed a little bit more development. All right, thank you.